Hello, everybody, and welcome to another RP Read Aloud. This one is for my dad's a bird person. My name is Mira, and I will be reading for James today, and with me is the very wonderful.
Hello, I'm Tired Penguin. You can call me Pengu because that is my name and I exist. I'm reading for the Birdman today, Kestrel.
Alright, let's get into it. My dad's a bird person. Superstar Partyplex at 12 FPS, text version. James has been doing his best to do his job in the kitchen. It's the end of his shift, and he's heading towards one of the nearest break rooms so he can finally just rest. He's so tired, even with the really good nap the other day. Honestly, he kind of wanted another nap. That sounded great. He winds up at the closest break room to the kitchens and just face plants into a couch. But he can't actually fall asleep this time, so he's just kinda staring into the couch cushions and mentally grumbling.
After a moment, he hears the door to the break room open. James,
James lets out a little grumbly groan. Yeah?
are you all right? It's Kestrel's voice, and he hears as he comes closer to the couch.
James rolls over so he can actually so he's actually able to see Kestrel. A yawn cracks open his face, making his jaw pop a little. Just tired. Haven't been able to sleep well lately after he lazily does a gesture to try and sum up all that happened in the basement during When Problems Intersect.
Kestrel has kneeled next to the couch and he nods in understanding.
James rolls insight. He got an 11.
13 deception. Kestrel looks normal.
James blinks sleepily and yawns. Something warm in his chest is waking up and unfurling like a blooming onion in a deep fryer. Warm and crispy and tasty. Hey, Kestrel, want to roll an insight on what expression is on James's face?
7.
With a 7, you just think James is super happy to see you because he thinks you're his friend. Yeah, that's probably why his face is so soft and genuine. Totally. What you doing over here, Kes? Oh, James is interrupted by a yawn. Kestrel, I didn't think your patrol route took you over here.
He's happy to see the look on James's face, though his expression remains unchanged. It doesn't. I'm currently off the clock. I was looking for you to ask how your application for a security position was going.
James wiggles himself upright and yawns again, scrubbing at his eyes. He's still smiling that soft, happy smile. Yeah, I'm still working on it. I was gonna talk to Eggs and see if he had any advice about stuff, too. I'm kind of spinning my wheels a little bit just because it's harder for me to fill paperwork out on my own. Feel free to roll insight again, Kestrel.
Nat 20. 21.
Oh, shit! Okay, my dude. With a nat 21, you realize that James is both really sheepish at struggling with something so basic in adulthood, and yet also is looking very fond at you. You remember James mentioning offhandedly how you reminded him of his dad, and maybe some of your natural actions are similar to said father?
Hmm. Would you like some help with the paperwork?
James looks surprised. Carrying on with that nat 21, though, you can tell he's really touched. James smiles up at Kestrel and digs into his hoodie pocket. With a successful 6, he pulls out the paperwork he's been filling out. Would you? It's been making my head spin, so I'd appreciate it.
He nods, reaching for the paperwork. There's no need to be embarrassed. It has never been my favorite task either. Only relatively recently has it become easier. He looks it over. Do you have a pen?
Another successful hammer space pull, and James hands Kestrel a pen. I used to be better about this stuff, he mumbles. My dad had me fill out shit all the time, part of the family business I was helping out with. His hand trembles a little. It's hard for me now. Feel free to roll insight.
Nat 20 again. 21.
Damn, those dice really like you, huh, Kestrel? Well, with a nat 21, you get the feeling that James used to do a ton of paperwork. This shouldn't be an issue for him, except. You see the scars on his face and arms, where there must be more further down. There's another scar that had been kind of hidden from view with his hair, a burn scar. So, several blows to the head, an explosion. It was a wonder James was even coherent and walking around like he was, let alone alive. Alongside that, however, you also get that the paperwork and family business that James is mentioning isn't exactly the most illegal of routes, but not as illegal as some family businesses can be. The way James hedges, it speaks more of secret identities and adventurers turned vigilantes. Say, didn't James mention offhandedly at one point or another that he was from Gotham, that crime capital that was Civic City, just a little ways away from Future World City? Wasn't there something about birds and vigilantes?
He takes mental notes of all this. Part of his job has always been listening, holding information until it can be put together. You're not in that job, Kestrel. Roll insight.
He's really eepy. He got a nat 1.
Oh boy. Kestrel just nods. You came in here to lie down. We can go over this together after you've rested.
James nods, leaning over against Kestrel's side. Okay, he mumbles. He really is tired. Nightmares haven't been letting up, mixing with Hairwire's own behavior and the trickster's. But the worst ones are the ones where he wakes up back in his grave, pounding at the wood and screaming for his dad. But he never comes. Despite the anxious swirls of thoughts of nightmares and trauma, James finds himself drooping, and his eyes slipped closed, head nuzzling into Kestrel's shoulder.
15 deception. Want to contest?
We got a 19 insight, baby!
Kestrel doesn't successfully hide his flinch when James's head finds that spot to rest. His feathers puff a bit, which only make him more of a comfy pillow.
James sneezes a little as he pulls away, blinking sleepily and rubbing his eyes. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. He apologizes, mentally kicking himself. Stupid. Kestrel isn't his dad. Kestrel is a coworker and a friend. He isn't Nick. Feel free to roll and see if Kestrel picks up on this.
17.
With a 17, you definitely pick up that he's kind of retreating back into something a bit more distant, more appropriate to a workplace friendship. He visibly feels bad for making Kestrel flinch, even if he's too sleepy to actually piece together why it may have been a bad idea. You definitely can see the self-recrimination in his posture.
Peck, why does that feel bad? James just needs this right now. He speaks as gently as he can, suddenly more aware of the natural grumpy tone to his voice, like being aware of your tongue in your mouth. It's all right, James. I just didn't expect it. He awkwardly scoots himself a bit closer. It's not a problem.
James searches Kestrel's expression, something fragile and hopeful in his gaze. James is rolling insight. He got an 18. He just needs to know if Kestrel means it.
He does. He didn't expect it. He's not used to it. He sure as heck doesn't understand why on Satori James did that. But it's not a problem. He's not upset. And perhaps it would be alright if James did it again.
Oh. Oh. Kestrel was like if James's dad had never raised Peck. He wasn't used to this kind of thing. Oh! Thank the gods. James had been worried he'd hurt Kestrel somehow. His body relaxes, and he telegraphs his movement, settling back against Kestrel's fluffy shoulder with a soft little sigh. Sleepy.
He doesn't want to move. He's not going to move. There could be an earthquake or an explosion or an alien invasion. He's staying right here in this spot, and his shoulder is not moving a centimeter. His feathers are warm.
James's dreams are pleasant at first as he sleeps against someone soft and sturdy, but as his exhaustion pulls him deeper into REM, the vague pleasantries morph into something more solid. His face scrunches up, and a whimper leaves him as his body twitches a little in his sleep. Dad? He whimpers out loud. The dirt is so cold.
Kestrel has pulled out a book at this point. It's hard to miss James's twitch when his head is against his shoulder. He tries to turn to look at him without shifting his shoulder. 15 insight.
James is still clearly asleep, but it awfully looks like he's. Oh, it looks awfully like he's having a nightmare, even with Kestrel's steady presence. His breathing speeding up as his hands twitch, curling into something that could possibly claw at something? Kestrel doesn't have enough information to know if James is wanting to fight or if he's trying to dig at something. But whatever is going on in that head, it's not pleasant. Will Kestrel try to wake him up or soothe him at all?
He doesn't know what to do. For a moment that feels longer than it is, he just stares, his hands clutching his book. He tries to think. He never slept in the same room as his siblings, was never able to be there to comfort them in their nightmares, but he has had them for sure. So he thinks, and he remembers his own nightmares, and those words James said to him that in hindsight he was sure James was repeating from his own comfort mantra. His book is set down and he reaches to hold one of James's shaking hands. James, you're all right. You're not there.
James is trembling, still stuck in the nightmare, but oh. Is that his dad? His dad! Dad! His hands slam against the wood and he screams inside the dream. In the waking world, all that it gets is a low whimper, his eyes fluttering. Maybe a little shake as well as the talking would help. Just a little bit of stimulation to get him out of being trapped.
He thinks of his nightmares of pain sensations that aren't real, but he doesn't know that unless his one hand clutches James's a bit tighter, his other reaches for his shoulder. He speaks clear now, not loud, but trying to be heard from wherever James is. You're not there, James. You're here. You're here. You're here. He doesn't realize he's breathing heavily too now, his worry almost making his heart race too.
James hears it that time, and it's the same kind of thing his dad would say. Kestrel sounds exactly like his dad to James. That as he wakes and clings to Kestrel as he shakes from the fear of being stuck underground with rotting wood and dirt, he cries out, "Dad!"
For some reason, he sure doesn't know why. He answers to that, holding on to James right back. I'm here. You're here. You're here. We're here. His feathers fluff more, not from a startle this time, but that subconscious feeling that he needs to be a comfort right now. Warm. Safe.
James settles into the fluff, nuzzling into the safety being offered. His mind slowly catches up to what he said, and he feels his cheeks heat, and yet... Yeah, okay, he doesn't even want to take it back. Kestrel is also a dad to him, just like Nick.
James is held. Kestrel doesn't let go. It takes his brain a moment to process what James said too, and with the realization, his feathers fluff more. James is having a nightmare. He said Kestrel reminded him of his dad. It's perfectly understandable. He doesn't need to read more into it.
If James had just slipped and not meant every syllable, he would have apologized. It's maybe a bit telling that he doesn't. Kestrel would have to roll for that, I think.
8 insight.
Well, with an 8, you just get James's soft smile as he pulls back a little. Thank you, Kestrel, he says quietly. I wasn't expecting to have another nightmare again.
He doesn't need to read more into it. You're welcome. Nightmares often have inconvenient timing.
James yawns tiredly, scrubbing at his eyes. You don't gotta tell me twice. Gods, going down into the basement was a choice. A choice I'd make again, considering the fact there's a fucking kidnapper murderer? Loose on the loose. But boy, am I reaping the consequences of my actions.
Insight.
James got 17.
Kestrel's having an emotion. A couple, actually. Guilt over his less than stellar performance that night and worry over James sounding a bit too willing to put himself in that situation again. Outwardly, he just nods.
James's nose scrunches up a little. Ugh, dads. He lightly pokes Kestrel on the shoulder, carefully telegraphing the movement. Hey, don't beat yourself up with what happened down there. We all got really triggered by shit down there, I think. And that kind of stuff is really hard to predict, let alone plan for. Especially when it's spooky beings working with pains in our asses. Seriously, I know it's Einquell, but what is it with people dressing up in brightly colored costumes and being absolute pains to deal with? He's a hypocrite. He knows this. But also, he wasn't exactly expecting to fight a new addition to his personal rogue gallery when he came to work at the Partyplex. Considering he hadn't remembered anything past his own name, that's not saying much.
Kestrel actually chuckles a bit. Two terrifying rabbits in one place is a bit of statistical anomaly. He holds up the application papers he held onto. I will help you fill this out when you're ready, but I'd also suggest you take care of your health a bit more before taking on this job. When was the last time you had a full night's sleep?
James opens his mouth. I take care of myself. I'm great at taking care of myself. The last time I had a full night's sleep was a night or so ago. James rolls deception. It's a 10. Feel free to contest.
17, boy.
Yeah, he's lying out of his ass right now. From the bags under his eyes, it hasn't been a full week since he's got a good night's sleep. Even before the events of Where Problems Intersect, James has been having interrupted sleep. It was more like it had started ever since he fully remembered how he died, his brain struggling to cope and process it.
Kestrel gives James a look that can only be described as a dad look.
James shuts his mouth with a click and wilts. He looks away, rubbing the back of his head, the hoodie sleeve tugged down by gravity to reveal more scarring from whatever banged up his head. I can't stay behind and do nothing when I know there's something wrong. But it's hard to sleep. I try. I really do try. But you saw it. I had a nightmare basically as soon as I fell asleep. I keep dreaming about the damn coffin or the bastard who put me in there, and He breathes out shakily, scrubbing at his wet eyes with his palm. I can't sleep. My mind won't let me. Shouldn't I be useful if I can't sleep?
Kestrel can't stop himself from going, coffin?
James flinches a little. His arms wrap around his waist. Yeah, Ezra isn't the only one who's dead here, he says quietly. I'm better off than some people, but I dug myself out of my own grave.
Insight.
Nat 20, baby!
Kestrel is experiencing a very reasonable amount of rage. Pecking rage at whoever did that to him. He takes a deep breath. That is another breath. I'm sorry.
James looks up at that. Yeah. His arms curl around tighter around his waist. He's still out there. Nightjar just puts him back in prison. Makra. It used to be an asylum. I think there's a wing that still is. Not the whole place, though, James shudders. Hairwire's laugh sounds exactly like his. He was laughing when he trails off, eyes visibly haunted. Kestrel, you've never really noticed it before, but James's eyes don't have any They are completely dark, despite the blue theoretically being something bright and vibrant, a haunted one. It's funny how it's one of the brightest, cheerful kids, well, not really a kid anymore, who has some of the darkest shadows in his eyes. No light, just pools of darkness from what he's seen, what he's experienced. Fitting, considering he's not exactly alive anymore.
Heck. Kestrel extends a hand to him again. James, deep breath.
James blinks at Kestrel and does so, sucking in air. His chest expands, and he does lose some of the tension in his shoulders as he takes Kestrel's hand. His hands are shaking.
Kestrel takes both his hands, in and out.
James's chest expands and contracts, following Kestrel's guidance.
Good. Again. In and out.
James does so, eyes slipping closed as he breathes in and out. Deep breaths. The trembling in his hands have stopped.
A very gentle smile appears on Kestrel's face. You'll be all right.
James's eyes blink open. They still don't have eyelights inside, but he looks far more settled now despite the darkness. As long as Kestrel's known him, as short as it was, he never has. It's just now Kestrel can see past the cheerful veneer that usually isn't a lie. Kestrel is close enough to notice just how haunted James really is, but he keeps trying anyway. James smiles at Kestrel, and it's warm and genuine, an odd juxtaposition with his gaze. Thank you, Kestrel.
You're welcome. Insight if you desire.
James rolls insight. He got a 14.
There's a faint hint of confusion. Kestrel didn't understand why James rested his head on his shoulder, and even now he doesn't understand that fond smile.
You're like my dad, you know, James says, and he knows it's a strange subject change to anyone not in his head, that it's abrupt. He's a lot like you. He doesn't really know how to hug just right, and he doesn't even say shit like he's happy. It's always very even and kind of growly, and his resting bitch face is like stone, honestly. But he cares. I wasn't his first kid he adopted, so he had a lot of experience with my older brother, Peck. But he still has his moments that remind me so much of you. And you haven't proven me wrong to trust you yet, just like my dad. So, I'm glad we met, Kestrel. His eyes slip shut with the force of his grin. You're kind of like a second dad to me here. It's really nice. You don't have to change anything you're doing if you don't want to. I just wanted you to know that you've brought me a lot of comfort just by being yourself.
Kestrel blinks. Roll another insight.
That's a dirty 24. 15 plus 9.
Well, all right. Kestrel can't beat that, but I'm rolling anyway. 15.
Sucks to suck, Birdman.
He blinks. His hands clutch James's, and he can feel a faint shake from his hands. He's taking those deep breaths again, and James can tell he's struck a chord. Not upset or hurt, no, just he feels undeserving. He looks down at both their hands, avoiding eye contact for a bit.
Oh, Kestrel. James's expression softens. His hands gently squeeze Kestrel's. I know it's a lot to be sprung on all at once, he says softly, but I'm not going to take them back. I've learned that love isn't about deserving. The best kind of love is unconditional and freely offered. You don't have to accept it or return it to have it. It just is, you know?
He visibly swallows, and he's quiet for a long moment, processing visibly in that way tunes do, but without the sound of turning gears. A long moment, and he nods. Far quieter than usual, almost sounding shy. Thank you.
James smiles at Kestrel, and it's almost like his eyes can sparkle like they used to. Of course. Thank you for listening to me, Kestrel.
He nods again and looks up at James. There's still that strong emotion in his eyes, his feathers still a bit fluff, still a bit shaky. He clears his throat. Anytime you need it, James, you are always free to contact me.
James nods. He's just so full of appreciation and care for Kestrel. So much gratitude. I will. I promise.
Another nod back from Kestrel. James's hands get a gentle squeeze as he stands. He takes the application papers up to the table, pulling the chairs next to each other as he sets down the papers and pen. Well, are you ready to go through these now?
A groan that is 100% transparently theatrical leaves James as he stretches and pads over. Yeah, okay. And our scene fades to black. The end. Thank you for listening, our wonderful audience. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.